I wish I can take a magic pill, put on shorts, and go out and play the game of basketball today. Because that's who I am. That's that type of competition, that type of competitiveness is what I live for, and I miss it.
Michael Jordan hasn't played an NBA game since 2003. He hasn't taken a single shot, sold a single ticket, or laced up a sneaker in an actual game in over 2 decades. And yet, this year, he's set to collect somewhere north of $250 million from Nike alone. Not from memories, not from nostalgia, from a check that lands every single year. Bigger than the paycheck of almost every active player in the league he used to dominate. How does a man who hasn't worked a shift since George W. Bush's first term out earn LeBron James in his prime? Stick around, because the answer says less about basketball and more about how money actually works once you stop trading time for it. Here's what makes this story worth your next few minutes.
For us, and I want to see what type of tricks Gary Payton got up his sleeve.
Kemp's turnover that's happening out there. Payton with the spin. Bryant, Kobe's first All-Star hoop.
It's amazing, Bob, when you watch Kobe Bryant practice and work on his...
This isn't a story about being rich. Plenty of athletes get rich and then broke a few years after retirement. There are studies showing something like 60% of NBA players face financial trouble within 5 years of leaving the game. Jordan didn't just avoid that trap. He built something that pays him more now, today, in 2024, than it did the year he retired. That's not luck. That's structure. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly how that structure was built, piece by piece, and why almost nobody else in sports has ever been able to copy it. A shoe Nike almost said no to let... Let's go back to 1984. Because the deal that changed everything almost didn't happen. Jordan, fresh out of North Carolina, actually wanted to sign with Adidas. He loved their shoes. Adidas was the cooler brand at the time, the European import, the one the stylish players wanted. But Adidas, in one of the great business blunders in sports history, dragged its feet. They didn't see a 21-year-old guard as worth building a whole shoe line around. So Jordan's agent, a guy named David Falk, went to Nike instead, a company that, at the time, was mostly known for running shoes, not basketball. Nike offered Jordan something no rookie had ever gotten: his own signature shoe line, with his own logo, and a cut of the sales. The deal was worth $2.5 million over 5 years, which sounds tiny now, but back then it was almost unheard of for basketball. Nike executives were nervous. The NBA was nervous too. They actually fined Jordan $5,000 every time he wore the black and red Air Jordan 1 on the court, because it violated the league's uniform color rules. And here's the part that tells you everything about how this played out. Nike happily paid those fines for him. Every single time. Because the controversy was free advertising. Kids wanted the banned shoe more than any shoe that was actually allowed. That first year, Nike projected they'd sell about $3 million worth of Air Jordans. They sold $126 million worth. That number alone should have been the end of the story, a wildly successful shoe launch, a nice payday, everybody moves on. But it wasn't the end. It was the seed of something that would outlive Jordan's playing career by decades, and to understand why, you have to understand what Nike actually gave him in that contract. Because the real genius wasn't the shoe, it was the fine print. The clause nobody else got.
I got one thing to say.
Yeah, what's that?
I see Adidas shoes.
All right, now, Michael, is this the shoe? Now, of course, we can't show what kind of shoe this is.
Yeah, that's okay. The color stand for.
But is this the shoe that the NBA wouldn't let you wear? Now, why wouldn't they let you wear it? Just because it's ugly,
No,
I
they
guess,
never
for
seen
starters.
Most athlete endorsement deals work like a rental agreement. The company pays you to wear their stuff, the contract ends, you move on, and the brand keeps the profits. Jordan's deal was structured differently, and this is the part that separates him from almost every athlete who's come after him. Nike didn't just pay Jordan to wear a shoe, they built an entire sub-brand around him. The Jumpman logo, the silhouette of him mid-air, leg split. That's now more recognizable to some kids than the Nike swoosh itself. And critically, Jordan kept getting royalties on every single pair sold, forever, as long as Nike kept making Jordan brand products.
Nice shot. Let's see what you can do now.
Let's go, man.
Don't smile, kid.
How much you want?
That's the mechanism. That's the entire secret. It's not that Nike loves Jordan so much they cut him a check out of loyalty. It's that Jordan Brand, as a business unit inside Nike, generates around $6 billion a year in revenue. Let that number sit for a second. $6 billion, with a B, from a shoe line for a man who last played competitive basketball when flip phones were still cool. Jordan's royalty is a percentage of that revenue, reportedly around 5%, which is where you get to that $250+ million annual number that keeps landing in his bank account whether he golfs all year or not. Compare that to how most endorsement deals work.
LeBron, as you take the court for your first game, how are your nerves tonight?
I got a little nerves in my stomach right now, but, once the jump ball start up, I'll be ready to play.
The second half of our NBA Wednesday doubleheader on ESPN.
LeBron James has a lifetime deal with Nike too, reportedly worth over $1 billion total, genuinely massive, but it's structured more like a giant flat payment tied to his name and image. Not an ownership stake in a self-sustaining product ecosystem with its own retail stores, its own design teams, its own sneaker drops that create lines around city blocks. Jordan isn't an endorser anymore. He's closer to a business partner. And that distinction, endorser versus owner, is exactly why his check doesn't shrink as he ages out of relevance the way most athlete deals do. Why the money keeps growing, not shrinking now.
But competitiveness is what I live for, and I miss it. I miss that aspect of playing the game of basketball. Being able to challenge myself against what people see as great basketball.
Here's the twist that trips people up. You'd expect a shoe named after a guy from the 90s to slowly fade. Kids today weren't alive when Jordan hit the shot over Craig Elo, or when he dropped 63 on the Celtics in the playoffs. Most Jordan Brand customers right now were born after he retired for good in 2003. So why does the brand keep growing instead of shrinking into a nostalgia niche? Because Nike stopped selling Michael Jordan, the basketball player, a long time ago. They started selling Jordan, the aesthetic, a symbol of excellence, rarity, and culture that doesn't need context to sell.
Camp, and I said, I think I just saw the best 6'4" high school player I've ever seen.
There is just no limit to what Michael tongue hanging. But he has that tongue out so much, I've always been worried about somebody coming up with an elbow and just knocking it right off.
A kid in 2024 doesn't need to know who Michael Jordan is to want a pair of Jordan 4s that resell for triple retail on release day. The brand generates its own gravity now. It's tied into hip-hop, into streetwear, into sneaker culture. As its own economy, there are entire resale markets, apps, and conventions built around trading Jordans like stocks. StockX, one of the biggest sneaker resale platforms, built a huge chunk of its early business on Jordan releases alone. This is the part that connects back to the money question. When a brand becomes bigger than the person it's named after, the person's payday stops depending on their own performance and starts depending on the brand's performance. Jordan could have a terrible round of golf, say something awkward in an interview, disappear from public life entirely for a year. None of it moves the needle on Jordan Brand sales. His royalty check is now decoupled from Michael Jordan, the human being, and tied to Jordan Brand, the machine. That's the exact opposite of how most athlete money works, where a bad season, an injury, or a scandal can tank an endorsement instantly. Remember how fast some sponsors dropped athletes after controversies? That's the risk of being the product yourself. Jordan isn't the product anymore. He's the toll booth the product has to pass through.
Drive, take off, and layup. That was the free throw. So now you can't start the shot outside the center circle, and you can't break this line until it hits the rim. That's a real change rule. Lord have mercy. Please make it.
The billionaire who doesn't need the NBA
Goes out the way he wants to go out. He brought a lot of joy to the game. I think the fans and the whole city obviously have paid him, a tribute, and he deserves it. He's been a big part to the game of basketball, and now his big task is what he's going to do next. And I think he's got some plans, and I look forward to seeing, where his life goes from this point forward, and him and his wife and the kids, they're going to be fun.
This is why Forbes has estimated Jordan's total net worth at well over $3 billion, making him one of the very few athletes to reach billionaire status. And here's the punchline nobody expects. The majority of that wealth didn't come from his playing career at all. His NBA salary across his entire career, adding up every contract from his rookie deal to his final years with the Wizards, comes out to somewhere around $90 million total. That sounds like a lot until you realize Nike now pays him more than that roughly every 4 months. $90 million over 15 seasons of being arguably the greatest basketball player who ever lived, versus $250 million a year, every year, for doing essentially nothing beyond existing as a symbol. That gap is the entire lesson of this story. Playing the game made him famous, but it was the ownership stake in a brand, the equity, not the salary, that made him rich beyond anything basketball alone could have paid him. Jordan himself has said in interviews that he never expected the shoe deal to become bigger than his playing career. He thought of it as a nice side deal, not a second, larger empire quietly growing behind him while he was busy winning championships.
Who's the greatest player of all time? Dumb question. It should be, who's the greatest team of all time? You know, there are so many teams to choose from. The 91 Chicago Bulls, sorry Showtime. The 92 Bulls, back-to-back. The 93 Bulls, first three-peat. The 97 Bulls, even with the flu. 98 Bulls, no push-off.
And that's really the twist worth sitting with. We tend to assume the biggest paycheck in sports goes to whoever's currently the best player, whoever's putting up the most points tonight. But the actual biggest recurring paycheck in the industry belongs to a 60-something-year-old man who spends most of his time on a golf course. Because decades ago, he, or more accurately, his agent, negotiated for a slice of ownership instead of just a bigger salary. That single structural decision back in 1984 is worth, conservatively, tens of billions of dollars over the life of the deal when you add up everything Jordan Brand has sold since. So when people ask how Michael Jordan still earns $250 million a year without lifting a finger, the honest answer is, he's not being paid for playing basketball anymore, and he hasn't been for a very long time. He's being paid because he owns a piece of a machine that sells culture, and culture, unlike a jump shot, doesn't slow down with age. The shoe stopped being about the man, the check just kept being about the deal. So here's the question worth sitting with. If you had one shot at a deal early in your career, would you take the bigger guaranteed salary, or the smaller cut that could turn into a Jordan Brand? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd genuinely like to see what people pick before they know how the story ends.